Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Life in Motion. I'm your host, Grace Becker. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and an enthusiast of life. And for today, I was wandering the world, the streets, and I found this really, really cute man. He's so hot.
Ooh.
And I
appreciate that.
kidnapped him and I forced him to be on the podcast. And his name is Jaden Rohrich.
Please help.
We're just kidding. No one was kidnapped.
We're just excited to be here.
Yeah. Jaden's my boyfriend. And he's been on the podcast before. How are you doing today, Jaden?
I'm doing really good. I got some very exciting news last night, so...
What was your exciting news?
The offer that we just put in our house got accepted. It was a backup offer, so it was even less of likely to get picked.
Yes. I'm so excited. We put an offer in on this house and it wasn't picked the first time. But then some stuff went down and basically they came calling back and they were like, we want you so bad.
Mm-hmm. Other guys were asking for too many closing costs.
Yeah, but good news for us, right? Because now we get the house. And if you're wondering why we're looking at you and not at each other, it's because if we look away from our microphones, you're not going to hear us very well. Like this difference versus if I look over at Jaden and I'm talking. Hi, Jaden.
I've been really bad at that so far. I'll try to be better.
So if you're wondering why we're not looking at each other, you're like, why are these two fucking robots not looking at each other? That's why. Because we want you to have a good audio experience, guys. Mm-hmm. Okay? That is why.
Paid a lot for these microphones. We better use them well.
Hell yeah. Y'all, podcast making these days, the money is not, there's none. Basically, I make no money off of this.
Free content.
So we try to provide the best content that we possibly can. How was my day today? My day, I have been doing so much running around today. We went and got coffee, which was really nice. Jane got me coffee and he got me a breakfast sandwich, which was delicious. There was some lady, though, who was bitching out our barista. I was like, oh my God.
He did not deserve that. No.
There was like 3 people in front of her. Jaden he's my Frappuccino boyfriend, my iced coffee girlfriend. Mm-hmm. He and another guy got a Frappuccino and some other girl got like a drink that was, I think it was really easy to make. It was just like a basic drink. And the barista like served up like their drinks and she was like, why are they getting their drinks? Like it was just very rude. Like, oh my God, just coming at this person. And Jade and I were talking, we were like, it's okay to be upset. Like it's understandable if you're upset. However, it's not okay to go like yell at someone like that.
Yeah, just ask him where your drink is and if it's coming up. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah.
You don't gotta be mean.
Quite literally. You
can be frustrated about it, but
yeah, you're entitled to your feelings, but your actions are not always valid, guys. So that was just an interesting way to start the day.
Coffee was good, though.
It was so good. It was so good. But yeah, and then I recorded another episode earlier today. So I'm doing 2 today. In case you're watching a video, that's why I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore in one of my other videos that I did. Yeah, I'm making sourdough bread. I don't know if I updated you all on that yet, but today I'm making my first loaf of bread. And I'm so excited. If I get good at this, I'm gonna be making so much fucking bread. It's gonna be quite literally coming up the ass, so.
I'm so excited for the gains. Weight gains, not muscle gains, but all the carbs.
We're gonna have to like take laps around the block after we eat a slice of bread. Oh my goodness. It's okay. Oh, we work out.
Slapping that thing.
we work out. It's all good. It balances out in the end. Life is all about balance, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Just about what we're about to talk about today.
Yeah, so what are we gonna talk about today, Jaden?
We are going to talk about money and the stresses that come with it and how to try to mitigate that stress.
Yeah, absolutely. So we acknowledge like the common and like the emotional taxing stress that can come with finance. So we're going to talk first just about like finance in general, like how it can impact a person's mind and emotional state and like what is financial stress. But then we're going to get into like practical financial like skills, things that you can implement into your life. So we're going to acknowledge like, yes, this shit is stressful, especially in our world. And here are some things that we can do that are in our control. So that's why I asked Jaden to be with me today, because I think I've talked about on other episodes how I have struggled with this exact issue, financial stress, so much to the point where I didn't even want to look at my bank account because I was stressed to know like what I was spending, what I was saving, like all these different things. So, and when I met Jaden, he was really helpful with like just figuring out how to budget, how to like snowball. We'll talk about these more, but like how to snowball my debt and different things like that. And so when I wanted to do this episode, I knew exactly who I wanted to do it with me.
Oh,
so
no, you've been doing great. She's been a lot more intentional and actually creating a budget, trying to stick with it for the most part. Eating out's kind of the
oh my god,
thorn in our
now you're putting me on blast
currently.
right now.
Food's good. I love
so
food.
funny.
We love food.
He's like, yeah, my big back girlfriend. She just can't lay off them tweets.
Big back.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So should we just get right into it, Jaden?
Let's do it. What's up first?
So up first, we're talking about like financial stress. Just like what is it, acknowledging it. So financial stress can mean a lot of things for different people, but basically it's when you're not sure about things like how you're going to pay your rent, how you're going to pay your bills. Maybe you have a lot of debt, student debt, credit card debt, medical debt, like, I don't know, whatever debt, whatever it is that you have. It's, living paycheck to paycheck with no cushion money. If you're in a constant state about like feeling worried or stressed if like an emergency were to happen that you couldn't afford it, like if all of a sudden you were to fall down and break your ankle and you're like, I don't know how to actually cover those bills, things like that. If you're like me or how I was, and I was so anxious just to like check my bank statements. If you had spending habits, like I know like for me personally, what I would struggle with is I would go in these states of like hyper spending and hyper saving where I would like spend a bunch of money recklessly, even on things I don't necessarily need, I just wanted. And then I would sometimes go into hyper savings where I would like kind of like be like, no, I can't get any of that stuff. Like that's not okay because I spent a lot last month and I need to save. So it was just really off balance way of keeping track of my finances. Jaden, what are your thoughts on some of these things I just listed that can contribute to financial stress?
I think in everybody's life, there's always going to be something that comes up. There's always an emergency. There's always a cat that has to go to the doctor. You got to get 2 root canals. Your car breaks down. There's all these things that are coming at you. Then you got to pay rent and for your food and for your lights. There's just so many expenses in day-to-day life. And I think as a person, you just need to be really intentional and think about what you have to spend and also prepare for the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those situations where you want to be as prepared as you can, but also you can't prepare for everything too. Like, because we want a balance, right? We don't want to hyper fixate and preparing for the worst, like doomsday things, but at the same time, we want to be responsible and be able to support ourselves in those moments where things kind of fall apart. So
yeah, there's a way to be responsible and to also be building for a better future while also enjoying your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do a lot with a little.
Exactly. So now let's kind of talk about what it looks like emotionally and mentally, this financial stress. Anxiety or panic when thinking about money is a major one that like kind of plays into this mental and emotional way of thinking about money. Jaden, what are some maybe examples that you've heard? I know that you listen to some like different financial podcasts, money smart podcasts and YouTube videos. What are some like stories you've heard or just like general information you have when it comes to this anxiety and panic that people have around money?
I think the biggest one is just not being able to pay your bills. I think that's kind of the obvious. There's so many different things that happen in life, like the car breaks down. I'm trying to think of a specific story, but I can't because I used to listen to Dave Ramsey's podcasts, and those stories are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, I'm $200,000 in student debt, and it's stressing me out, and I only make $50,000 a year. I'd spent all this money on college, but I'm not actually using my degree, and I'm working at McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah. or like I have some people who I know who are really bad with gambling, both in my personal life and professional life. And like they also feel not only this anxiety or panic when maybe, let's say, they don't make the money they spent or they lose a lot of money, but also there's a lot of shame, guilt, and fear of failure when it comes to finances for them. And I know I'm talking about like people who gamble right now, but I think that's something that people who don't even gamble feel, like the shame and guilt. What do you think, Jaden?
Trying to compare yourself with others and trying to appear successful. Like, yeah, I go gambling. I won this $2,000 pot the other night, whereas you've spent $5,000 the past month and have lost considerable amount of your paycheck.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I don't like it, but I like the fact that you brought up like the comparison. I know that's something that I did a lot. When I was, especially in college, and just starting my life for the first time away from family and friends that I knew, it was hard not to compare myself. Like, oh, like their parents are helping them pay for college, or oh, their parents got them this, or oh, they're so lucky that they had this good paying job to get them through college, or whatever the case was. There was definitely a lot of comparison I would do, and I know there's also a lot of people, like when you get older, sometimes people compare how much debt you have compared to like your own situation, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can compare yourself, and probably feeling that shame or guilt around your finances.
Right. Personal finance is definitely personal. Everyone's on their own road. Everyone has opportunities. Everyone has different skills and talents. Yeah. It's really important to play with your strengths, and maybe just because you don't have a super rich family and you don't get paid through college, you can still manage what you do have really well and make a good living for yourself.
Yeah. A big one with like the shame and guilt that I've recently been like hearing a lot about is with retirement, because there's so many people who I think don't really get that financial education early in life, and say they start their retirement when they're in their 30s, 40s, and there's maybe that shame around, oh, I started so late, like I'm not gonna have much in retirement. Or even later, like people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s who don't start some aspect of their financial journey that would help them in retirement. A lot of that fear of failure going on in that situation.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that hasn't started saving for retirement or haven't even thought about it and are feeling like a failure or like you're behind, I don't want to say suck it up, buttercup, but
yeah.
The past is the past. That's kind of where I wanted to go. You can't change that. There's no better time than now to start. Yeah. The younger you start, the better it'll be. Compound interest, that's a really good word if you haven't heard about that.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about some of these things as well. But yeah, Jaden's absolutely right that, you can't, if you are in your 40s, 50s, whatever age you are, and you're feeling that shame or guilt around it, you cannot go back and get those years back. The best thing you can do is start right away, right? And if you are younger, right? If you are in your 20s, early 30s, and you're hearing this is your sign. Definitely go start what you can, because it's going to help you in the long run. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Jaden, what other would you say are aspects of this mental and emotional anxiety or stress that can come with finances?
I think the one thing that everyone kind of strives for is financial peace and security, and just being able to live how you want, do what you want when you want, and not having to worry about, oh God, am I going to be able to pay my rent this month? Do I need to go spend less to afford groceries? Am I going to be able to afford my phone bill? Or is my electricity going to go out? Like, these are serious things that can happen because of this, and it can really stress a person out.
Yeah, absolutely it can. And this can even spread into other areas that are not just that emotional, mental state. It can impact things like your physical state, right? You can have trouble sleeping. You can have that fatigue, lack of focus, headaches, tension, changes in appetite, because the body keeps a score. And if you are feeling that anxiety, panic, stress, irritability, burnout with your finances, your body is going to reflect how you feel internally. And these things are going to happen for you. So if you can relate to any of this, this is maybe your sign to, you know what, like, let's really tune in this episode, y'all. Let's tune in. So, Jaden, thinking about financial stress, what do you think are some common ways that is created? What causes financial stress?
I think the biggest thing that is a big contributor is living beyond your means, spending money that you don't have. This could be in the form of taking out loans, credit cards, spending thousands of dollars on credit cards where you pay 25% interest, 30% interest on them, when you really don't have the ability to do that, or medical bills that can cause stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Like living beyond your means, kind of like spending more than you're making, your income, and debt, kind of what I'm hearing you say, like the medical bills, loans, credit cards, whatever. Credit cards. That's a good one. Cars, too. If you buy a car that you can't afford, brand new. Yeah.
Some people think it's an asset. I very much disagree. I think it's a way to get from point A to point B. If you don't have the money to ride luxury, buy a nice used car that'll get you there.
Cars, I think, are a big one for people because it's like, oh, I want to show up in something nice. I want to impress people, or when I pick up my date, I want it to look good.
I want to look successful.
Yeah. And again, that kind of comes to that comparison that we were talking about, when you feel maybe that sense of shame of, yeah, I have a used like 2010 Toyota Camry. It's like, no, fuck that. You have a 2010 Toyota Camry and you're not in debt because of it.
And you probably don't break down as much as the BMWs either. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had that issue. No, I don't.
I've got a Honda Civic. It's been treating me very well. Yeah. 2008, 200,000 miles.
And guys, take it from me. I did do this. I didn't buy a brand new car, but I did buy a new to me used Subaru. And I did it because I wanted a car that was safer than the one that I had beforehand. But I had to take out a car loan to be able to afford it, and now I'm still paying off that car loan. And now, like, hindsight 2020, I would have preferred if I didn't do that. But again, I can't go back and change it. The best thing I can do is now snowball it. And y'all, that's the only debt that I have left is my car loan. So that's what I'm paying off now. So.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, go Grace. Jaden, have you ever heard the term living paycheck to paycheck, or that phrase?
I absolutely have.
So that's something that I think kind of comes up a lot when we're talking about this, what causes financial stress, and this debt and cars and medical bills and like living beyond your means. Can you talk about how that can influence living paycheck to paycheck? Kind of like what is that?
What is living paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah, what is it? And because that, I think, in turn relates to what we were talking about before.
Okay. Living paycheck to paycheck is saying, thank God it's Monday. Oh God, it's Friday. I don't get paid until Monday. Or if you're on a 2-week pay schedule, you've got to wait a whole week if you've already blown your whole paycheck. Living beyond your means and spending money that you don't have and not having the proper savings also can cause this, not having an emergency fund. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, in the event of like an emergency, something happens, you don't have the cash to pay for it. Now you've got to take out more debt, and then you're that far behind. You're paying interest. You're not allowing your money to work for you, and you're just constantly falling further and further behind.
Yeah, and it is difficult to break free from that, to get to the away from the paycheck to paycheck. But it does start with like doing a budget and, saving, snowballing debt and things like that we'll talk more about. But what about for those people who are doing everything that they can, right? Like they have their budget. If they have debt, they're working on that, they're saving, but they're still living paycheck to paycheck, maybe just because like that's what they have the means to do. And they have a big family that they have to provide for. What would you say about that in this aspect of living paycheck to paycheck?
If you are living paycheck to paycheck and it's you've got a lot of expenses, obviously, because you're in whatever situation you're in, there's a huge emotional side to finances. That's the biggest thing. But there's also a factual side to finances. The numbers don't lie. There's two sides of the equation. There's either you got to earn more or you got to spend less. And if you can figure out a way to do that, then you can kind of start building up an emergency fund, and then eventually get out of the state of, oh God, it's Friday, thank God it's Monday and I just got paid. That mindset. That's a Dave Ramsey thing too, if you've heard that one.
Yeah, definitely go check out Dave Ramsey's podcast too if you're interested in hearing some stories. Maybe you'll relate to some stories and get some help from him. So that'd be good.
That's where I started for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of fun, interesting stories, and it's something that really doesn't get talked about in friends and family and coworkers, but you hear the wildest things because personal finance is just not talked about in communities a lot just because it's so private.
Yeah. Okay, so I know another really big aspect, especially around like COVID. This happened a lot where people were losing their jobs, losing their consistent, stable income. And I think there was a huge like boom in financial stress. Jaden, what do you have to say about that?
I think that if you were one of the people that had hardship during COVID, that's totally understandable. That's why the government kind of stepped in with all their stimulus and tried to provide help to different businesses and everything. It may not have gone as planned, but it happened. During COVID, if you were to lose your job, you can lose your job really at any time. That's where having savings and emergency fund comes in, so that when that type of stuff does happen, you have a fallback plan and you're not stuck high and dry with all these bills with no income.
Right.
That can be devastating.
Right, yeah. And just like acknowledging, like, yes, like that is a hard time. Whatever you're going through with this financial stress, you can accept and understand that this is happening, this is overwhelming, this is stressful, and there are certain things out of your control that you just have to learn to accept, you don't have to agree with, and always know that there is something there that is in your control that you could try and do, whether it's to actually solve the problem itself, like the direct issue of like the finances, whether it's you have too much debt, not enough income, you're spending too much, whatever that is, or if it is, you know, looking into your mental, emotional state and physical state and focusing on that, you know, just doing what you can control. Jaden, what would you say is like a person's like, for example, I'm struggling to phrase this how I want to. I did not grow up with a lot of financial literacy. I did not have someone to really guide me. What would you say to a person who maybe is young and just like starting to figure things out, or maybe just a person in general who's older and doesn't like know where to start? Where would you say is a good place to start?
I think a good place to start is probably Dave Ramsey. He's got great content. It's really geared towards people that are struggling and in debts, and the current economy today where most people can't come up with $1,000. I think it's 60% of Americans can't come up with $1,000 if they need it, and that's pretty much a medical copay, or not a copay, but your medical deductible. You can't come up with that. Or I also like the Money Guy show. That's kind of who I listen to more. They're really informative. They have a bunch of free content on YouTube. I'd be wary of TikTok influencers or Facebook or Reddit.
I don't know. I've gotten some good information. I've seen some good influencers out there. I certainly wouldn't swear off all of them.
Oh, absolutely not.
But obviously with anything, even with podcasts, even with our podcast.
Yeah, even with me.
Like definitely do your research. Don't take what we say as like the final say, or like that's the only way to do it. Definitely, like hopefully if you're listening and you like what you hear, this is kind of to take yourself, like take off running, you know?
Yeah, this is just what I've learned and what's helped me as a 23-year-old going through college and trying to make way through life, buying a home.
Yeah, buying a home for the first time, like, guys.
Definitely do your own research. Don't just trust anybody just because.
Yeah.
For no reason. I mean, Money Guy show is good. If you're going to watch TikToks or look on Reddit or Facebook, whatever, definitely vet them. Make sure they're a reliable source, because there are a bunch of financial gurus who are just out there selling programs.
Yeah.
Trying to make money off of you, or they're just trying to say something wild for the clout to get attention.
I don't Oh, God, I feel so bad now. I don't remember her name, but she's an influencer, and she's relatively new to TikTok. Her family and her, they're all in finance, and they do very well for themselves. I think she's kind of like, people have been calling her the princess of TikTok. And she came out with a video recently where she explained like stocks and bonds, but using Sephora as the example and like the products and all the brands in Sephora. If I can find it, I'll include her in my show notes below. But there are definitely influencers out there, like, because even that video, if you asked me what like certain things about stocks and bonds, I'd be like, I have no fucking clue. Mm-hmm. But after watching that, she just explained it in a way that it all of a sudden clicked with me. So there are definitely, whether you're getting like solid like terms and information from TikTok or Reddit or whatever, or you're getting analogies like how I got from this woman. Take it all with a grain of salt, but I definitely do enjoy some of those out there, some of those sources. So, yeah.
And I mean, if you have those sources, that's totally fine. I wouldn't invest in anything you can't understand or that doesn't make sense. If you're going to put your money into something that you've worked hard for, to save for, understand what it is you're putting your money into and really be intentional with that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Before we get into some like practical tools and like getting smart with finances, let's talk about the psychology of money a little bit more. Because how our money mindset, I should say, is heavily impacted by different things. It's impacted by how we were brought up, the education that we received, trauma, different beliefs that you have. I know that for some people, right, you might be taught like money is bad, money is selfish, right? Like we're givers. We are very helpful people. Whatever money you have, you give. Sometimes to the expense of yourself, right? Or I'll never be good with money. Sometimes we can tell ourselves that. So it's kind of almost an out we give ourselves of, oh, well, I'll never be good at it. Might as well just, spend what I want. Do what I want anyways.
You only live once.
Yeah, YOLO, right? You only live once. Like, I could die tomorrow. Like, yeah, you could die tomorrow, or you could live another 50 years in debt.
Yeah.
Like, let's be able to live in the moment, be mindful of our money. So, Jaden, what are some other, like, money mindset, like, psychology of money that you've heard before?
Especially recently, that you can't get ahead in today's economy. It's just too hard. The world's too different. Inflation, yada, 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 all these terms. There's just no shot of ever buying a home or having a nice life or doing anything because groceries are too high or home prices are too high. I think that's a big mindset that kind of deters people. And it is harder than it was in the past to do some of these things. And inflation is a real scary thing. And since COVID, it's gone up immensely, and interest rates are ridiculous right now. But I guess interest rates aren't so bad, especially with home prices. They used to be a lot higher, up in like 15%, I think, back in the day. But comparatively to like the 80s, I just looked this up right before. It was like the average median income to the median home price. Let's say you made $100,000, the home price would have been $337,000. That would be like the median home price you would buy. Now it's 5.7 times median income. So if you made $100,000, the median home price now would be $570,000. That's just some simple math, but the home
simple
price,
to you, complicated to me.
The home price to income ratio has gone up, and income has not kept up with home prices. So it's a little bit tougher, but time will tell what happens in the future.
Right. And I mean, like, that's just one more thing that we can't always control, right? We can't control certain aspects of like inflation, and like, obviously there are things like people can do, but in the grand scheme of things, you can't control if like our egg prices skyrocket to what would they get, like $8, $10, $12 a box of eggs. Like, it's just doing what you can in this economy that makes sense for you.
Control what you can.
Yeah.
Definitely a myth. You can definitely get ahead and have a good savings and life for yourself.
And it can take time. It can
Yeah.
take time. So be patient with yourself is a big thing as well. So
Absolutely.
that's something I've had to learn, is to be patient with myself, because especially when I started like figuring out more financial literacy, that shame and guilt kind of hit in, almost like the 5 stages of grief. And I was like angry, I was ashamed, right? Guilty. And I was like, you know what? Like, I am just learning this for the first time. And like, I know the mistakes I've made and I know what I have to do to fix it. So that's the best thing I can do, is be patient, snowball my debt, different things like that. So
Doesn't happen overnight.
yeah, absolutely.
So-
And also, like, avoiding it is not going to help the situation at all. Like, I know that's what I do, right? That's what I used to do with avoiding my bank account. Avoidance is not going to help anything. So let's introduce curiosity over judgment when it comes to our finances. So with that being said, Jaden, can you share some of your thoughts around what are some practical tools and ways to get smart with your finances?
I think the main thing is budgeting. I think that is the way to discover where your money's actually going and get out of that paycheck to paycheck mindset. Once you find out how much you're spending and how much you're actually earning, and figuring out how much you have left over, if any, and trying to squeeze any margin out of that, that's how you can really figure out how to save and start making ground, so to say, in your financial life.
So walk us through like setting up a budget. So let's say I'm starting off and I make like $60K a year, and
It's warm.
it is warm.
I'm air drying my hands.
Okay.
Okay, keep going.
So let's say I make $60K a year, right? And I have $10,000 in credit card debt, and I have $20,000 left in my student loan debt, roughly.
Okay.
And how would I get started with a budget? Like, and I get paid a salary, $60K a year, right?
Okay.
How would I start off with my budget?
Okay, so you have $30,000 in debt and you make $60,000 a year. If you would want to take your for sure known expenses. I use an app called Every Dollar. That's really helped me. And you take your rent, your food, your
Primary, like the things you have to be.
things you have to pay for.
Yeah.
And then you also include things like fun money, restaurant money, grocery money. You include all the expenses that you'll think you'll have for the month. Don't get too caught up in the weeds with this. Try to get it as close as you can. You'll never be perfect. Over time, you'll learn and really understand yourself and be able to be more intentional with what you're spending. And then after that, you can figure out also how much you make. And then you subtract what you make minus what you spend in a month. And that's kind of like your leftover money. So say you make $60,000 a year. Quick math, that's, what is that a month? $5,000 a month pre-tax?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say your rent's like $1,500, you got $3,500 left. All your other expenses add up to $1,500, that's $2,000.
Yeah.
Just knowing those numbers and actually being able to use those, and knowing like, okay, I've got $500 in student loan payments as well as my credit card and my car payments. And I have $1,500 left at the end of the month.
Okay.
So after all those expenses, and after you figure out your income, and after you figure out what your debt payments is going to be for the month, then you can start allocating the rest of that money that you have extra into paying off debt, saving up for trips. They call that a sinking fund. Or like Grace and I are going for Europe. I've had money saved for 12 months trying to save up for it, a little bit each month. Or purchasing a home, having a down payment. I've been saving for that for like 4 years into an investment account. I've put a certain amount of money into it, and I've kind of done the math where I know how much I need to invest every month to be able to achieve my goals. And if you're that person making $60,000 a year, you can definitely be intentional with your money and figure out how to achieve some of those, as well as also paying off your debt, because that'll be huge in decreasing your risk, not having, $1,000 a month in payments is huge. What could you do with that $1,000? If you invest that, that's quite a bit of money over the long run.
Right.
Just not having that extra payment.
Mm-hmm. So basically, when you're creating a budget, you start with, okay, how much are you making? Take that, right, your income, and then figure out what are your expenses. That includes things like your debt, like maybe a monthly, like what's your like bare minimum monthly that you have to make. But more than that, you want to figure out what other expenses that like non-negotiables, like your rent. You might need gas, your bills, your phone bill, your electricity bill, all those things. Put those into that. And then afterwards, you can calculate, okay, so this is all the debt and the rent and all that stuff is mandatory. Like, I have to pay that. At the bare minimum, I have to pay that. I can sacrifice not going to the restaurant for a month, but I cannot sacrifice rent. Otherwise, I'm not going to have somewhere to live. And then you can take whatever's left, put that into things that you were talking about, like restaurant money, for fun money, clothes, different things like that. And then at the end, maybe if you have excess, you can either snowball that into your debt and pay off more than the monthly payment, or you can save it up for things like how you and I are saving up for Europe.
Exactly. And right away, you want to be super intentional with it. You want to have this budget. I use every dollar. I love it. It's perfect. It's free. While you're doing that right away, you need to track every little thing, every purchase, know what you're spending. Those first few months of actually kind of seeing what you're spending money on and understanding your spending habits, it'll really be a shock to you how much money you'll find you're wasting on whatever, because that's a really good way to diagnose where you're struggling with. Like, if you're spending $1,000 a month on eating out, you're eating your retirement away. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Straight up.
Yeah. So I know we've mentioned a few times an emergency fund. I believe Dave Ramsey recommends at least $1,000 for an emergency fund. And that's just in case you were to like accidentally need a medical bill, like you need to go to the doctor, or if you have a pet like me who needs to go get their teeth extracted or needs to have induced vomiting because they swallowed rubber. Norman, stop doing
Jesus.
that. Your pica ass needs to stop.
That was so scary.
Yeah. So I know Dave Ramsey recommends that. Jaden, I have a question. So how can a person, if they are in this like maybe paycheck to paycheck and struggling to like maybe kind of make those ends meet, how would you advise them to go about setting up an emergency fund for themselves while also struggling with this living paycheck to paycheck aspect?
It absolutely starts with creating a budget, being intentional with the money that you do have. Dave Ramsey recommends $1,000. That's not your full emergency fund. That's just the first step. That's just so if you have to go to the doctor and you have a $500 deductible, or your car tire pops and you have to pay $200 or something. Just little things that kind of set you back and really get you off course.
Yeah.
But as you start budgeting and as you find where that margin is, you can start to increase your emergency fund. Dave Ramsey says $1,000 until you pay off all your debt. If you're incredibly in debt, $1,000 may not be enough margin for you, depending on how much risk you have.
Right, depending on your situation. Yeah. Each situation is going to be unique, so I think at the end of the day, do your own research for your situation and get help, like from an advisor or something.
Like, if they recommend 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund, minimum of 3, just of your basic necessities.
Your expenses,
Your
right?
expenses, yep. And if you're a homeowner, you might need to have more for expenses as an emergency fund. If you own a business, you're at more risk, so you need more of an emergency fund. If you have kids or someone that depends on you, that just increases it even more, just to have that cushion between life and you going down the wrong path financially.
Well, you know what, Jaden, I depend on you, so could I depend on you to be my emergency fund? You heard me. Could I depend on you to be my
She's
emergency
a big girl,
fund?
y'all.
Okay, we established I'm a big back, Jaden. We ain't gotta put me. No, guys, I'm actually very petite. I could blow away in the wind. Do not.
Slip underneath the door crack if she really wanted to.
Oh my gosh. No. Okay, we're getting sidetracked.
All right, let's keep going.
We're getting sidetracked.
All right, where were we?
But
Emergency fund.
So now let's talk about snowballing debt. I know we've been talking about that. I've heard a lot about the debt snowball versus an avalanche method. Can you tell us what that means? Those two things.
Debt snowball is paying off your debts from the smallest amount. So you have 1,000 in credit cards and then 20 grand in student debt and 35,000 on a car. You start with the credit cards right away and then kind of work your way. As you pay off another debt, then you have more money to put towards the next debt, making minimum payments on everything except for the smallest. Mm-hmm. The avalanche method, that's more of a math approach to it, and it's technically the better way. I say that with a grain of salt a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's paying off your highest interest rate first, and that would be great, except money is very much an emotional thing for a lot of people. It is proven that people are more likely to get out of debt using the snowball method versus the avalanche method, just because of the mental aspect. Paying off one debt and having more money and getting those little wins right away is really helpful. Kind of like dieting. If you see yourself losing a little bit of weight, it gives you a little motivation. So that's kind of what the snowball is, versus if you have $100,000 in student loans at like 8% and your car is only at 5%, but it's 10,000. So you're going to be paying that a long time.
Yeah. So debt snowball says pay off the debt that is currently the least amount. So like pay your $1,000 debt off before you pay your $10,000 debt off.
Right.
But
get
then
those little wins.
Yeah, and then avalanche goes to say pay off the thing with the highest interest, because in the long run that'll save you money because you're not paying that high interest.
Right, and realistically, if you're really intentional about paying off your debt, Dave Ramsey has a lot of crazy stories about people paying off $100,000, $200,000 in 3 years. Mm-hmm. The interest rate on those really doesn't affect too much because of how quickly you're paying it off. So if you're paying it off fast, the mathematical portion and the nerdy portion of doing that really doesn't make that big of a difference.
Okay, yeah. I know one other thing too that I think about when it comes like to getting smart with finances is being able to track your expenses without obsession too. Because I know some people who are so, I'll say frugal maybe, where like they go beyond tracking their expenses to the point where they are so controlling and obsessive about their money and they're just not able to live their life. Jaden, what would you say to some of those types of people?
If you are really intentional right away about tracking all those things, I think that's a good thing. I think it's really important to be maybe not frugal, but I keep using the word intentional. I love that word. That's just like know where your money's going and count every dollar because it's all important. But if you get to the point where you're kind of a Scrooge and you're complaining about $5 on parking, or you don't want to go out and have a drink because it's too much money, or you're like, Starbucks for $6, if you have that a couple times a month, that's like $30 or $50. That's really, really bad. I would never do that. You're dumb for spending that money on a cup of coffee. Like, I could make it home.
Yeah.
If you're like that, I don't believe in the don't drink at Starbucks because it saves you so much money. I'm more into the thought of the bigger purchases are what actually matter in your financial life. The car that you drive is a huge thing. Just based off depreciation and monthly payments, credit cards, buying luxury clothes with money that you don't have, or maybe going to a college that you couldn't afford when you could have went to community school, or buying a house where your house payment is 50% of your income. And those are the type of big purchases that'll actually ruin you for years versus just buying a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and again, like this is all it depends on your own situation. Because say you like go to the nice college where like you're investing in your education, which I think is very important to be doing. Investing in your education is one of the best things you can invest in. And like, say you're investing and you're going to become a surgeon. Like, okay, are you going to pay that debt off like really fast? Like what, like there's different aspects of your own situation you'll want to take into consideration when looking at these different tools that we're talking about.
Right. There's definitely different degrees. I could go on and on about different
sure
college degrees, but we're not going to do that. But make sure your degree makes sense and make sure that the amount of debt that you're taking out is reasonable for what you're getting.
Right. Yeah. Make sure you're investing in something that you actually know you're going to, that you would enjoy. Yeah. Because last thing you would want to do is spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a degree that you're like, nah, I don't need it. But it is nice to have. So
it is.
There's two sides of every coin, right? Okay, Jaden, what are some other practical tools that you would recommend to people or that you want to talk about?
Practical tools. I guess budgeting is a big one. I think using your resources, educating yourself. Dave Ramsey, Money Guy Show. There's a bunch of different good sources on YouTube. That's where I guess I kind of started.
I know you talked about retirement compound interest as something.
Yeah, that's a really good word to know. So that basically means that the interest, so you invest money into a company, and then as they advance and they make more profits and they build a little bit, you get a share of that company and that goes up.
This was actually something that girl on TikTok talked about with the Sephora and like stocks and bonds and compound interest. She was like, terms that finance bros like to overcomplicate. And then she talked about it.
Sephora. That's a good, it's really just your money, interest compounding on top of interest.
Yeah.
So like if you've got, let's say $1,000 invested at 10%, the first year you're making $100 off that. And now you have $1,100. And now the next year you're making 10% off that $1,100. So now you're compounding on top of that. And it really starts small, but as you continue to go on, that compounding just increases and increases. I think the term I hear is $1 invested in your 20s can turn into $88 by the time you're 65 and in retirement. Just because of how compound interest works. And the first couple years you start, you won't really see anything, but once you continue to invest and your savings rate increases, the amount of money that actually grows from your investments will continue to grow.
And if $1 can be $88, then imagine what $100 could be $1,000, $5,000, and so on and so forth. So
exactly.
Amazing. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. And then what about controlling risk? Like how might a person manage, risk when it comes to their finances?
That's a really complicated topic because it's all personal. The biggest thing that we've talked about today is an emergency fund, having that cushion between your life and also your financial journey. So if you are a homeowner, you're going to need more money in emergency fund just in case your hot water heater goes out, or you need to pay for, different things in your home. Your washer and dryer go out, or whatever happens. There's a lot of different things, but you're at more risk, so you have to manage that accordingly.
Yeah.
And just in doing that and knowing your risk tolerance, you can then figure out, okay, how much should I spend? And is this investment okay for me? Am I going to be okay if I buy this home? Am I going to be okay if I go on this trip? Am I okay to buy all these different clothes that I really want, or a Prada purse?
Okay, don't look side-eye me like that. I do want Prada. We just watched The Devil Wears Prada, and oh my God, I need everything from inside that movie. Please, Marilyn Monroe, Anne Hathaway, if you are listening, which I don't know if you are, please, I want a Prada purse.
Some Prada.
Someday. Yeah. I got debt to pay off first.
So just knowing your risk tolerance and knowing what you can invest in and knowing what you should invest in, and kind of the financial order of operations, what the Money Guy show says, but it's what you should be doing with your next dollar based off your risk tolerance and what's going on in your life.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I really want to talk about quickly, shifting that conversation to financial boundaries and relationships, because that is another big piece that can influence a person's relationship. Whether we're talking about maybe you've been financially abused in a relationship, or it's just like discussing money in general with family, friends, partners. It's very important to learn how to have those conversations, and they can be difficult. So one, if you're struggling with like financial abuse, like a financial abusive relationship, I recommend going to a therapist and getting help further with that situation. If it's coming to talking about about finances with partners and family, bringing it up, right? Bringing about like, what is our budget going to look like? How are we going to split costs of things? Learning how to set boundaries is very important. Learning when to say no to certain events or certain things that just don't work within your budget. And then finally, just kind of resisting that comparison and shame game. Like, been there, done that. It doesn't do anything but kind of make the problem worse and worsen that mental state. So if you can learn how to do some of these tools that Jaden talked about and just shared with all of us, in addition to gaining that mental and emotional intelligence around money, like, you are kind of like golden star. Like, you are prepared to get going with this. Jaden, is there anything when it comes to financial boundaries and relationships that you would like to add?
I would say if it feels like someone is taking advantage of you financially, make sure that you confront that. Whether it's your girlfriend, it's your family asking you for money, you owe nothing to anybody unless you're in debt to them. And it was agreed upon that you got to pay them back. Just because your mom raised you, or just because you're dating this girl and she expects to go out somewhere,
a Prada purse,
whatever the case is, or she's struggling to pay rent and you've got to pay for it. Like, that's not on you and your choices. That's on them and their choices that they're in that position. So just know you're not responsible for other people's financial, unless they're dependent on you and they're your kid or your wife, then that's a little different.
Or your husband. Come on, right. Jaden. Let's not be sexist.
Or husband.
Or lesbian lover, or gay lover.
Whatever partner you may have.
Yes, absolutely.
And you don't have to go to every event. I mean, you can go out and party, but you don't have to spend the money that you think you have to spend. You can, for the longest time, I would bring a flask to bars because I'm not paying $100 for a night to just get a little buzz going. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But
yeah, and I like how you were talking about unless like it's someone who's dependent on you, you have no reason to feel the pressure to please that person just because they want it. Like, no, it's not your problem. And I know it's hard to set boundaries with people that you're close to, especially when it comes to partners, family, friends. And it is a skill, it is an asset that is going to help you with many things in your life, and especially this financial boundary that we are talking about. So learning how to do that is a skill just like any other. So practice it and learn to set those boundaries.
Right. And I would say if someone is asking you for a loan, especially if they're like friends and family, take that heavily, because once they owe you money, it just is the dynamics a little bit different. Yeah. Now they owe you, and every time you see them, it's like, hey, are you going to pay me? And if they don't pay you, like, you're resenting them. And you're supposed to have a relationship with them, whether it's your friend, your mom, or your dad. But now it's like, man, you went to go on this trip, but you didn't pay me back? What the hell? And it can strain a relationship. So I would say be careful with the people that you involve your financial life with and give loans to.
Yeah, absolutely. And find a partner, like someone who is going to work with you on issues as well, not work against you, right? Like if you really want to create a budget and learn how to be smart with your finances, and they're like, no, I want to continue to live freely and do whatever.
Oh boy.
Like, have that serious discussion, right? I know Taylor and I, we were on a podcast where we talked about things to talk with your partner before you make big steps with them, such as living with them, getting engaged, getting married, having kids. Like, we talked about finances in that episode. I don't remember, it was a few episodes back, but check that out, you know, for different conversations to have with these people in your life, because it's important. So,
do you want to tell them how we split our finances as a couple not living together?
Yeah. I'll let you take that, because I also don't know. How do we split our finances, Jaden?
We don't.
Oh, I was like, that's why I was confused. I was like, I don't think we do split our finances.
No, we'll treat each other to different things. We'll take each other out. We'll go Dutch sometimes and pay for our own things, or we'll take turns on big meals and date nights.
And that's because we're not married. Right. But we're going to be living together soon, so we'll split things like grocery bill or our electricity bill, but I'm not out here expecting him to take over part of my student loans. Well, I already paid those off, or like my car debt, and he's not expecting me to help him pay the mortgage on the home that he bought. So until we're married, that's a different story. But that's just us, you know, like that's why. And when Taylor and I were talking in our episode, you have to figure out what works for you in your life, and those conversations are important.
The boundary that we have in our relationship, and I think it's been working well so far.
It has. So, okay. Well, just like in closing, you know, just like kind of wrapping it up, Jaden, what is there like anything else that you would like to mention to our listeners today?
Start early. Start being very disciplined and kind of understanding where you are financially. Don't be afraid to look in your bank account and really track down the money that's coming in and the money that's going out. Know where you're spending and try your hardest. That's all you can do in today's economy.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in the weeds about all these different things that you can do. There's no get rich quick scheme. I mean, it happens sometimes. But for most people, that's just not reality.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And I think one thing I would also say that I would like to add before we end today is to celebrate your wins. You guys, like, life can be so draining and hard and difficult that it is so important to learn how to celebrate your wins. And you don't have to go all crazy. I'm not saying you have to go buy a nice expensive car as soon as you just finish paying off some debt. I'm saying just find ways to acknowledge and make space for those wins. Like, after I was done paying off my student loans, I think I went and I took myself out for a dinner, and I celebrated, and I told my friends and family, and I was like, yeah, this is amazing, right? So it's important to acknowledge those wins, because it does feel good, you know, and when you're making those right steps, it's also rewarding, and you're acknowledging hell yeah, I'm killing this shit, you know. Life likes to throw those curveballs, but we duck, we curve, sometimes we get hit, we dust it off.
Dust it off. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Just keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jaden, thank you so much for being on today. It was really nice to have your expertise and your knowledge.
Oh boy.
What?
I really enjoy talking about finances. It's been a passion of mine for a while. I've started young, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed doing this episode with you.
I just wanted to say thank you, Jaden, for being on today. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and things that you've learned along your way. And yeah, just I personally find you to be very knowledgeable on this stuff, and full of helpful information and tips and tricks for people. So thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I had a fun time.
Good.
Hope you guys learned something.
Yeah, hopefully.
Something.
If not, whatevs.
Yeah.
If not, okay. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please leave 5 stars, leave a review, share with people that you know. Shout out to my editor, Ben. Thank you for your help in editing my podcasts. I'm going to leave all my social media and my email in the show notes below, as well as if I can find that TikTok creator that I was referencing down below. But yeah, I upload every Thursday, so make sure to stay tuned in to hear all about Life in Motion. But until next week, embrace the chaos and find the beauty.
Bye.